3 sentences. That's all it took. Not tonight. Why your shoes? And just like that, a night that was supposed to be about winning, about finally breathing easy for once, turned into a reminder that some doors don't close quietly, they slam and they make sure you know exactly who decided you didn't belong. Yeah, that happened. Earlier that day, I'd been sitting in my car in a parking lot, engine off, phone still warm in my hand, trying to process the fact that for the first time in a long time, something had actually gone right. My manager had just told me I was getting promoted, real title, real raise, the kind of jump that makes you sit back and think, okay, maybe all that grinding wasn't for nothing. I remember staring at the steering wheel and laughing under my breath, not because it was funny, but because it felt unreal. You know what I mean? Like you're waiting for someone to say, just kidding. But it didn't come. So I called my girlfriend and she screamed, and suddenly the day had a different weight to it. We decided to celebrate that night, not big plans, not some over-the-top thing. Dinner, drinks, music, just us enjoying a win. I went home and took my time getting ready, not rushing, not stressed, actually enjoying the process. I picked an outfit that felt like me, clean, simple, put together without trying too hard. And the shoes mattered to me more than I realized at the time. I'd bought them that afternoon, fresh white sneakers, still bright, still stiff, the kind that almost feel too clean to wear outside. I remember thinking, half joking to myself, all right, nobody can say a thing tonight. Everything about me looked like someone who had every right to be anywhere he wanted to be. Dinner was perfect. No rushing, no checking the clock, just talking, laughing, sharing plates, that easy energy you only get when you're not worried about the next bill or the next bad email. I paid without flinching and smiled doing it. We talked about trips we might take, about what the next year could look like. For once it felt like the future wasn't something to brace for. It was something to look forward to. After that, we headed downtown to a club we'd been to before, nothing exclusive, nothing secret, just a popular spot where people go to dance and drink and feel part of the city for a couple hours. There was a line not too long, just long enough to settle into that familiar rhythm of waiting, people watching, catching bits of conversation. That's when I noticed the guys in front of us. 3 white dudes laughing loud, clearly already feeling good. Their shoes stood out to me not because I was judging, but because they were rough. Dirt packed into the soles, scuffs all over laces that had seen better days. One pair looked like it had been through a construction site. They stepped up to the rope, showed their IDs paid, and were waved right in. No pause, no comment. 20 seconds maybe. Then it was our turn. The bouncer didn't ask for my ID, didn't look at my girlfriend. He just looked at me then, down, then back up and said, "Not tonight. Find another spot." At first, I honestly thought he was talking to someone else. I looked around confused, then said, "Wait, what? Why?" He crossed his arms like the conversation was already over. "Your shoes." I looked down at my feet, then back at him, and I couldn't help it. I laughed a little because it made no sense. My shoes. "They're brand new." My girlfriend spoke up, calm but clear. "You just let guys in with muddy shoes. His are clean." He didn't even really look at her. "I heard you." "Still no." And that feeling hit me, the one I felt before but never really gets easier. That quiet, sinking realization that this isn't about rules, it's about who gets questioned and who doesn't. I asked, "That's really the reason?" And that's when his tone shifted just a bit, enough for me to hear it. "The reason is, I make the call. And the call is no. Enjoy your night." There were people behind us suddenly very interested in their phones, the street, anything but what was happening. The rope stayed exactly where it was. I stood there for a few seconds longer than I should have, not arguing, just letting it register. Then I turned around and walked away. My girlfriend followed, furious, already talking about complaints and reviews and how wrong it was. I didn't say much. I was replaying his words in my head. I make the call. Like that explained everything. We walked about a block before I stopped. I reached up and tapped the side of my glasses almost without thinking and said, "I think I recorded all of that." She froze. "What do you mean? These glasses? They were on. Dinner, the line, everything." She looked at me, eyes wide. "Everything." "Yeah, everything." That night at home, we watched the footage. Over and over. And there it was, plain as day. The dirty shoes getting waved through, the clean shoes getting stopped, the shrug, the words, no mention of policy, no explanation beyond personal discretion. And something clicked for me. This wasn't just a bad interaction. This was a pattern I'd seen before, just usually without proof. A few days later, I filed a complaint with the state civil rights office. I didn't have high expectations. I'd heard the stories. Nothing happens. It's your word against theirs. But this time it wasn't just words. It was video timestamps faces. The investigator called me after reviewing it and said, "This is one of the clearest cases of discriminatory enforcement I've seen." Hearing that felt like someone finally saying out loud what I already knew. Things moved fast after that. The club was asked for their dress code, their training materials, their incident logs. What came back was exactly what you'd expect. Vague language, appropriate attire, excessively dirty, nothing defined, nothing objective. And when the denial records were reviewed, a pattern showed up that was impossible to ignore. Most of the people turned away that night looked like me. The few white patrons denied entry had obvious reasons. Too drunk, underage, no cover. Everyone else, shoes, clothes, didn't fit the vibe. Then came the testing. 2 men, same outfit, same shoes, different skin. The white tester was waved in. The black tester was stopped. Shoes aren't up to standard. They did it again. Same result. Again. Same result. At that point, there was no pretending this was random or accidental. It was a system doing exactly what it had been doing all along. The club didn't fight it. Fines were issued. Training was mandated. Policies were rewritten. Cameras were upgraded. Monitoring was put in place. The bouncer was fired. He tried to say he was just doing his job, just enforcing the rules, but when your job relies on discretion and your discretion follows a pattern, that excuse doesn't hold up for long. I also filed a civil lawsuit. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted a headline, but because humiliation has a cost. Being publicly dismissed, talked down to, made to feel small for no legitimate reason that sticks with you. The case settled quietly, enough to cover the legal fight and then some. Enough to let me finally do something I'd been thinking about for years. I started telling stories, mine and others like it, because I realized how many people carry these moments around without ever really unpacking them. About a year later, I was standing on a stage at a conference looking out at a room full of business owners, lawyers, advocates. Behind me on a screen was a still image from that night. The rope, the shoes. The guy who thought I make the call was the end of the story. I told them the truth. Dress codes aren't neutral. They're tools. And tools reflect the hands that use them. When rules only apply to certain people, that's not order, that's bias with paperwork. Afterward, people came up to me. Some thanked me. Some admitted they'd ignored complaints like mine before. Some told me they'd been turned away and never knew what to do next. And that's why this matters. Not because one person lost a job, not because one business paid a fine, but because documentation turns feelings into facts, and facts force change. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been denied entry somewhere while watching people who clearly didn't meet the standard walk right past you? Did it feel random, or did it feel familiar? Was it really about the rules or about who they were willing to bend them for? Drop your story in the comments. Push back if you disagree. Tell me if you think discretion is necessary, or if you think it's just another word for unchecked power. Because these conversations don't go away just because we're uncomfortable having them. And if you believe accountability should matter more than I make the call, hit subscribe. I'll see you next time.